Hi, it's Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and we've got an action-packed week for you. We are doing grief this week, and I know grief is like, oh, that's so depressing. Well, it's literally a stage of it. But we've got a lot of great things, and we're going to talk about grief beyond loss, and there's some great things that we are looking at when it comes to what grief is and what grief isn't. Grief is us moving on and finding new ways. So we can grieve the loss of jobs, we can grieve relationships. There's so much beyond just the loss of life and death. Where grief, we're looking at it every single day and not even realizing we're in a bereaved state. So this week we've got grief beyond loss and changes and understanding the grief response. We have attachment and how this reflects in loss and change. We have healing our familial wounds. So looking at our past and the capacity our family has. We put a lot of stress on our parents to be perfect, and best thing we can do is really understand that they are only human. And then how to grieve in increments. How do you hold space for yourself? As always, I've got key steps to live a happier and healthier life workbook. Get it on Amazon. It's dropped in the video description, as well as saying goodbye to bad brain, which has a lot of these principles in a more neuroscience-based format. You can also go to my website. I've got lots of blogs. After each one of these videos, there's going to be a free resource that you can access on my blog. I look forward to talking with you and hearing from you. Please hit that subscribe button and like and comment. I am here to support you. Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Hi, it's Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and we are talking about grief. We are talking about grief and change and being able to understand what and how our grief response is. The first thing we're looking at is there are 4 powerful grief archetypes that shape how we handle change. So nobody loves change. Some people thrive in change. Some people avoid change at all costs, and change is a part of the grief process. So if we are resistant to change, if we try to avoid it, there's probably some entanglements and something greater happening that is keeping us from wanting to engage in a change mindset. And so coaching and therapy can be really, really helpful, and you can go and click in the video description and schedule a free wellness consult just to see, is that something that you are going through, and what are some key ways that you personally can overcome it. So the 4 archetypes for grief are the emotional navigator, the rational problem solver, the spiritual seeker, and the active avoider. And so the emotional navigator is processing grief through feeling and expression, where the irrational problem solver is doing it through more of analysis and action. The spirit seeker is really trying to find meaning and growth through that sense of change. And the active avoider is really just developing a more conscious grief processing skills. They're really trying to get past what is happening, and they really like to sit in denial stage. Some of the signs to know whether or not you are in grief, and as we said in yesterday's video, that grief really happens to us all the time, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're in a grief state. But if we find that we are angry all the time, and that's not typical of us, if we think that we are changing how we engage with life and we're not getting as much joy out of life, if we are kind of hiding away and avoiding things, if we are kind of denying and bargaining and trying to create justifications for the things that we're doing, then we may be in a grief state. Now, there is clinical depression, there is seasonal affective disorder, but sometimes it really is situational too. Something has triggered us amongst a change, and we're just trying to figure that change out and trying to make sense of some of the stressors in life. If you go into the video description, you can actually take a quiz to see what type of griever you are and key ways to be able to help you find coping mechanisms and your grief processing style and how to get through that. There's a lot of ways in which we can cope. Obviously, you know, my work with people is I have the 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, action. And so we want to be aware and label, hey, I'm grieving. What state of grief am I in? I am in anger, I am in depression, I am in bargaining, I am in denial. I'm probably not in acceptance, or wouldn't necessarily be grieving, but it is a part, it is a part, man. It is a part. And then we want to accept. Acceptance is not agreeing, it's understanding where we're at, and then it's agreeing and taking one action step towards agency that we have to kind of better ourselves and change our space. And so some of the coping skills that we can do amongst that is we can have positive affirmations, we can have valid data points, we can do the breathing exercises. You can go to past videos to get into a lot of these coping mechanisms. I even have a blog for performance psychology and how to overcome a lot of these barriers. So there's a lot of things that we can do that we want to be in a here and now state. We want to label and accept what we're doing, and then we want to take one pivot away from it. And remember that suffering and gratitude are on the same spectrum, and we'll have a video on that. But suffering and gratitude are on the same spectrum. So when you can find value, strength building, and growth, or gratitude, then you are removing yourself from this pit of suffering and despair that you cycle in, that we all cycle in, which is a part of a big aspect of what grief is. And so, like, when we are in each of these dominant archetypes, there are things that we want to do to make sure that we are appropriately addressing the grief for how we are. So if we are in an emotional navigator state, then we want to be able to regulate our emotions, right? We talked a couple weeks ago about the spectrum of emotions, and you can go on my blog and you can take a look at that. There's a whole workbook on emotional regulation. And so if we are using emotion to process grief, we're probably at one of the ends of the spectrum. Either we are avoidant and we're showing no signs of emotion, and that would also be for the active avoider, or we are dysregulated and we are overly emotional and we are using emotions to lock ourselves into grief. And so the more that we build awareness around it and what our triggers are, the more that we can start to compensate for what we do and come to a preventative place of this emotional mastery. If we are more in a rational problem solver archetype, then again, we may be on the end where we are not showing much emotion, or we are blocking our emotions, or we're using intellectualization as a way of blocking our emotions. And so we want to bring in a little bit of our emotional brain to get into the emotional mastery. And again, like, logic is good, but you can't block. You have to have both sides of the brain working in a balanced state. So doing some grounding exercises, getting the body involved, will help you to get out of the, out of a blocked state and really be able to regulate your emotions and encompass all of the key factors that are needed for success and allowing for that personal growth. And for the spiritual seeker, you really see that finding meaning, value, strength building, growth, gratitude is a way in which you are able to grow out of change. And know that, again, life is chaotic. We cannot control our outcomes. We can't control our processes. And we do either work towards, cycling and suffering and despair, or we're finding value, strength building, and growth. And so allowing yourself to ground, to scan the entire thing and place yourself where you need to be for your own personal growth is going to help you to get out of these bereaved states. I am Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much.